This week's Parsha talks about the daughters of Tzlafchad. Tzlafchad was a man who lived in the times of Moshe Rabbeinu, and he passed away shortly before the Yidden went into Eretz Yisrael. Jewish law states that inheritance only passes through sons, but the problem is he only had daughters, and the daughters did not want the piece of land in Eretz Yisrael allotted to him to leave the family fold. They wanted to get ownership of it instead. They go to Moshe. Moshe says he doesn't know. He asks Hashem. Hashem makes a special exception and a new rule that if the person has no sons, the daughters are able to accept the inheritance. It's very interesting because the pasuk that talks about the daughters of Tzlafchad coming over to Moshe says they came to Moshe, then they came to Elazar HaKohen, then they came to the Nesiim, and then they came to the entire congregation. It seems quite confusing that they would first ask Moshe, and if Moshe said he didn't know, they would go ask the average Joe on the street. Wouldn't you think if Moshe would say, I don't know, that would mean the average Joe on the street also doesn't know? Our go-to source for obvious questions, which is Rashi, explains. The Gemara had this question, and the Gemara gives two answers. Rabbi Yeshia says that the pasuk is meant to be read in reversed order, backwards. First they asked the average guy on the street, and they kept asking higher ups all the way until they got to Moshe Rabbeinu. Abba Chanan gives a second answer. He explains that they went into the base medrash where everyone was learning, and they asked everybody at once. So everyone was asked at the same time equally. However, the problem with this is that this is not the first time Moshe did not know the answer, and the pasuk implies that the Yidden went on to ask other people after Moshe said he didn't know. Take for example the Makoshesh, the guy who blatantly for the first time disrespected the laws of Shabbos. The Yidden went to Moshe, what do we do with this guy? Moshe says he didn't know, and they went to go ask other people. We have the famous story with Pesach Sheni. They go to Moshe, could we have a second chance? Moshe says, I don't know, let me ask God. But where's Rashi in those two cases? He doesn't explain anything like what we explain over here. Explains the Rebbe that it all makes perfect sense, because when it came to the person gathering wood, they knew that he was chayav misa, that he was liable to the death penalty. They just didn't know what it was. So they brought him to everyone and said, you guys figure it out. It wasn't what is the law, it was how do we kill him. Therefore Rashi does not need to explain, because he already knew that the halacha was that he is chayav the death penalty, and there was only a minor clarification of what type of death he is to receive. However, when it comes to the story of Pesach Sheni, and when it comes to the story of this week's Parsha, they didn't know the law. Or really, they did know the law, and they protested it. We know we can't bring the Korban Pesach, but we want to. We know daughters can't inherit the land, but we want to. And what is put on for display in these two instances is the power of a bakasha, a power of a request. Because these two requests literally altered halacha. They changed the law. When it comes to Pesach Sheni, they added a day on the special calendar that is now called Pesach Sheni, a second chance. Therefore, Rashi gives our second answer, that they went into the base medrash and asked everybody, because the whole idea of a base medrash is people learning to bring something brand new to the table. But it is even more so expressed in this week's Parsha. When the daughters of Tzlafchad ask Hashem if they can please have an inheritance, they did much more than adding a new law to Torah, like our second answer and like the story of Pesach Sheni. They retroactively rewrote the Torah. They reversed the pasuk, like our first answer as well. The law had existed, but as Rashi tells us, the halacha escaped from Moshe. He didn't remember it. It was the daughter's request that re-inscribed it, that put it back into the Torah in a new way, that now they can inherit things as well. So the message and lesson of this week's Parsha is very clear, that the power of a bakasha, the power of a heartfelt request from Hashem, is so strong that it can change Torah and it can rewrite Torah. It could bring things together in a way that the world has never seen. So it's up to us to reflect on ourselves, especially during the 3 weeks where we reflect on the fact that we don't have a Beis HaMikdash, we don't have Kedusha and holiness all around us at all times. To make a bakasha, to make a request, because as we see from this week's Parsha, Hashem doesn't turn away a request from His chosen nation. All we gotta do is ask for Mashiach, and we are sure to get it. Wishing you a wonderful Shabbos.